Hi, I'm Rick Dior, and today we're going to talk about the practice pads that I use. I've done a video on this in the past, just about practice pads, different ones. I had some rubber ones and ones with heads, all kinds of practice pads, but I didn't really talk about the ones that I use, and this is the most common question I get. What pad is that? What pad do you use? What pad should I use? So these questions come pretty much every day. So I'll make this video and then I can refer all of you to it who ask me the question. My favorite pads are pads that have real heads. So I don't really like playing on rubber pads or mesh pads or Zymox, uh, you know, pads, anything like that. I like something that has a real drum head, which is what I use in real life, is a real drum head. They might not always be as bouncy or as tight, but I feel like it gives me the best representation of what I'll be performing on. So today we'll talk about all the pads that I use that have heads. And they range in price from fairly cheap to very, very expensive. And the sticks I'm going to use today are these Cocobolo Rosewood barrel tip sticks. And this is my go-to warm-up stick. It's early in the morning here, very early, about 6 a.m. This is when I warm up for the day. And I usually warm up for about an hour, and I warm up on a pad that's got a head. Usually one of these, an old quiet tone head, or one of these. I can hold it up. These are, it's actually my favorite practice pad of all time, the original Ludwig metal tunable pads. So we'll talk about these in a minute. So pads with heads have a very long history, starting with Henry Adler, the great drummer and educator. Wrote some books, was a performer, and most importantly, a great inventor who invented a lot of things that make our lives as drummers and percussionists easier. So one of his great inventions was the original quiet tone drum mute. This is an original one, okay, from the 1960s. I found it in a pawn shop in New York down the village in the 1980s, and I was thrilled and I bought it. It doesn't sound great anymore because it's so used. I believe this is asbestos. I'm not sure, but it certainly looks like it, so I try not to sand it down and breathe it. And I'll play a little of it for you. And let me see if I can do this safely. Yes. So it'll have a little bit of a rattle. So these pads did not get very tight, and the original ones did not use a coated head. They used this kind of plastic head. Back in those days, they called it Mylar, and they had been around for a long time by then. And the newer ones had coated heads, and they were much more responsive. So if you find one of these old ones, they're great historically, but not great for practicing. They just don't feel really good. They're loose. You can't get them much tighter than they are. You can open it up and try to put another piece of hard foam in there. I've had students who've done that to the old ones, and that might work. But that is an original, okay? So that's where it all started. Okay, and then you had the Ludwig pads. So these were a fantastic invention. Not quite sure when these came out, but I believe it was the 1970s. And these are metal, and they're heavy, and they're well made. It's got this particle board under here. I have lots and lots of these. I probably have 12 of these because I love them so much. I have them in every location you could imagine, at the college, my other house, in my studio, in my house, in my car, everywhere. So some of them were black. Now this is plywood, and this was particle board. So I believe the particle board ones are older, but I could be mistaken. So if one of you out there is a practice pad historian, you can let me know. But the later ones had these plywood, black plywood. Okay, that's how you can tell. Now there's many versions of this. I'll show you a few today. Stack them up here. This one seems like the oldest, okay, that I have anyway. So It's got a Ludwig Weathermaster head. By the way, these are 8 inches, if I didn't say that before. They're totally tunable. You can get these really, really tight. You get them so tight that it pulls. I don't know if you can see that. It'll actually indent the wood there. That's how tight you can get them. So this one sounds different than all the rest of them, and it uses a different head. And we'll play all of these for you in a minute because they all sound different. The next head we had was the Ludwig Ensemble head. I believe they used this for their tambourines as well for a while. I'll show you that. And then there was another head, I believe this one was later, that it actually said on it TA practice pad DB750. We'll show you that. This one's in fantastic shape. I just picked this one up. And, you know, you'll see them online, but sometimes they're a disaster. And I have some that are really bad. This one's great. And you could mount these on a stand easily, or you could just put them on a towel on your drum. It did bounce around quite a bit like that, though. So I'd recommend a stand. Now, the threads don't necessarily fit many modern stands, but you could definitely find something. I have a few stands here. I'll show you in a second. So I believe I went through all the iterations of this. Yes. Okay, so the stand, this is an original stand that came with the practice pad. So this is what it looked like. Had this little rest thing on here. I guess that's so you could grab it. And you unscrew it, and the thread is fairly thick. So I don't know the size of it. Maybe I'll try to measure it and put it on there. But it's a coarse thread. It looks like it might fit a Gibraltar stand, okay? And it just screws on just like that. Be careful. These things will cut your fingers. The lugs, or the what looks like lugs, are upside down screws, okay? And basically what you would do is just take a drum key and just tighten the crap out of it, okay? And I like to leave them loose because I want a little more of a workout. But they sound fantastic and they feel great. So I'll play a little of this one. This is the one that I use a lot. You can almost play a buzz roll on them. It's difficult, but you can because they're that tight. Now, the only bad things about these is that you cannot play brushes on them because they're too small. But they're small, so you can fit them in a backpack, you can fit them in a snare case, anything. They are a little bit heavy because of all the metal, but they last forever, pretty much. I mean, like most of these are, you know, over 50 years old, and they all sound great. They work great. So we'll show you some difference in the sound. There's another one that's on a stand. So here's another one. Now, I'll show you a few more. Just go through some of these so you can hear it. I'll do another one. I like that one a lot, actually. And another one. That one resembles the one before it. And finally, this other one that I showed you that was strange. Well, this sounds completely different. Not crazy about that one. It sounds like a Remo pad, which we'll show you in a minute. All right, so that's probably the oldest one, I would think. I'm not sure. It's got a very old head on it. And it could just be the head. Someone changed the head. And it could just be because it's a different head. So that's possible too. All right, let's show you some of these Remo pads. So the Remo pads This is an extremely old one. They used to come with this disc, all right, that you could just put on your drum and it kept it on there. And you know, one of the things I like about these smaller Ludwig pads is they're tiny, so when you're working on them, you keep your sticks in one spot. Because if you wander too much, you'll wander right off the thing. So it's good training to be able to do that. So these Remo pads are the same thing. And the problem with the Remo pads, you can't get them real tight. Now the older ones are great. This is a really, really old one. You know, I don't know how old, to be honest with you, but I would say it's probably from the 1970s, probably, maybe older, and they feel much, much better than the newer ones. The newer ones, let's find, yeah, the newer ones. Here's a pretty much brand new one. They look like this. They're much cheaper made, as everything is today with all the different parts. Usually the old stuff is better, in my experience, just part-wise. So, of course, you can mount these on a stand. This one's meant to mount on a snare drum or a snare stand. But these have the same kind of screw, but it's smaller than the Ludwigs for the cymbal stand. And they make a stand for these. I am not crazy about these. If you need something cheap to carry around with you, that's the answer. You can't get them real tight because these screws only tighten a certain amount. It comes with this little cheap key that you can use to screw these on there, or just use a screwdriver, but not the greatest thing. So you cannot play buzz rolls on this. Just sounds like crap no matter what you do. So it's fine for open practicing. And there's lots of versions. There's a 6-inch version. It's even smaller. And there's lots of companies that make them. Ludwig makes a version of this now. Pearl makes a version. This is a CB700 one, I believe. So, you know, they're cheap. They're meant for educational percussion stuff. So it's an option, though. That has a real head. Still better than rubber. Now, the Quietones, the new ones, are very good. At first, when Sabian bought the rights from a guy in New Jersey, who I will not name, but he was distributing them and for a while, and I bought a bunch from him over the years for students. They changed the parts, Sabian, and they were terrible for like 4 or 5 years. And I would try to fix them, and I had students who built new frames for them and all. But then finally there were enough complaints and they fixed them, and they're much, much better. So this is a 10-inch version. This is great. Very portable. It's heavy. It's the closest thing to these old Ludwigs that you'll find, because you can't find the old Ludwigs. So it works really well. Good for buzz rolls. But not as good as the original. I'll compare it. It's going to get dangerous here in a minute. All right, so this is a later one from the 80s, so with a coated head. So when you see me doing my videos on a practice pad, this is most likely what I'm using. This or one of the Ludwigs, which I love. The problem with these is they rattle, so you see this little towel I put, microfiber towel under there. Over time they wear out, they rattle. They will ring too. They all have a weird, peculiar ring to them sometimes. So you can muffle that with towels or whatever, tape, whatever you want to do. But they work great. And great for brushes. The best thing for practicing brushes, besides a cardboard box. All right. Now, one thing I got to tell you is, if you buy one of the old ones like this used online, you got to be careful, because a lot of the old ones had problems. This is a really old one, just like that one, from the 80s probably. And check this out. I don't know what's up with this thing. A student basically brought it into me and said, could you fix this? And I haven't had time to mess around with it because I've been so busy, but I'm gonna this week. And I think the membrane here, under here, broke. Feels like it. So it's just dead. It's like playing on a pillow. So be careful if you buy one used. I think I can open this up and probably put some sort of hard foam in there, but it'll never be the same. But once again, this is a very old one. So I would just buy a new one, a new Sabian. They're good. They're not that expensive. I've seen them on Reverb for 50 bucks. That's your best bet. If you could find one of these old Ludwigs, you're going to love it. I mean, they're incredible. My favorite pad, pretty much, for playing on. It is a little bit loud. So when it's loud, what you could do is just take a microfiber, you know, I'm into microfiber, and just put it over the pad, and there you go. Hope this helps. Anytime you have a question from now on about this, I will be referring you to this video. So I'm not typing the same thing over and over again. And I appreciate, as always, though, your questions and your emails, and we'll see you soon.